Australia's countryside is known for its rugged beauty, vast fields, winding dirt roads, and a silence that feels almost sacred. But in the stillness of those open plains lies a darkness that few dare to speak of. This is a story of one such darkness, hidden in the heart of the Australian outback. A tale of isolation, fear, and an ancient curse that still haunts those who dare to tread too close. It began with a couple, Jess and Peter, who had decided to leave the bustling city life behind. They had purchased an old farmhouse in the countryside of New South Wales, hoping to start anew. The house was a fixer-upper, to put it kindly, but Jess was an artist who saw beauty in the rustic, and Peter was a writer who craved the quiet. It seemed perfect. From the moment they arrived, however, something felt off. The property was secluded, miles from the nearest town, with only the occasional kangaroo or bird for company. The farmhouse itself was weathered and creaked with age, but it wasn't just the house. It was the air, thick, heavy, and oddly cold for summer. On their first night, as they unpacked boxes in the dim glow of a single lantern, Jess noticed something strange. Scratched into the wooden beam above the fireplace were strange symbols, circular patterns, almost like a spiral, but interwoven with jagged lines and crude shapes. Jess, what do you think it means? Peter, probably just something the previous owners did, artistic flair or a bored child with a knife. But Jess wasn't convinced. The carvings felt deliberate, purposeful, and they gave her an uneasy feeling. Still, she brushed it off and went back to unpacking. The first few nights passed uneventfully, but on the fourth night Peter was woken by a sound. It was faint at first, like the distant hum of wind, but then it grew louder. A low, guttural moaning rising and falling in the stillness of the night. Peter, did you hear that? He sat up, his heart pounding, but Jess was sound asleep. Peter listened for a moment longer before chalking it up to the house settling or an animal outside. He lay back down, but the sound persisted, gnawing at the edges of his mind until he finally fell into a restless sleep. It wasn't long before other strange occurrences began to unfold. Jess's paintings took a dark turn. She had always loved capturing vibrant landscapes, but now her canvases were filled with dark shapes, shadowy figures, and swirling skies. When Peter asked her about them, she couldn't explain it. Jess, it just comes to me. I don't even remember painting half of it. Peter dismissed it as creative inspiration until one afternoon, he heard Jess scream from the barn. He ran outside, finding her pale and shaking. She claimed she'd seen someone inside, a man tall and thin with hollow eyes. But when Peter checked, the barn was empty. Peter decided to do some research on the property. He drove into town, visiting the local library and speaking to an elderly librarian who had lived in the area all her life. When he mentioned the farmhouse, her face darkened. Librarian. That house. People used to call it the Whispering Hollow. There's a legend about a family who lived there in the 1800s. They were farmers, but they vanished one night. The only thing left behind was their livestock, dead in the fields, and those symbols carved into the house. Peter, what do the symbols mean? Librarian, no one knows for sure. Some say they're warnings, others say they're meant to bind something. But whatever it is, people around here don't go near that place. When Peter returned, he told Jess about what he'd learned, but she brushed it off. Jess, it's just a story. Every small town has its ghost tales. But that night, as they lay in bed, the whispering began. This time, It wasn't just Peter who heard it. Jess's eyes snapped open and they both froze, listening. The voices were faint but unmistakable, like a chorus of mournful cries. When they stepped outside, the voices stopped. The air was deathly still. But then Jess gasped, pointing to the field. In the moonlight, they could see them. Figures standing in the tall grass, dozens of them, unmoving. Jess, who are they? But Peter had no answer. He grabbed her hand, pulling her back into the house. They locked the doors, closed the curtains, and stayed awake until dawn. They decided to leave. The house was too much, too strange, too unsettling. But as they packed, Jess realized something horrifying. Her paintings, the ones she couldn't remember creating, were depictions of the figures in the field. Each one had the same hollow eyes, the same gaunt faces. And in the background of every painting was the farmhouse. But even as they left, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows in the rearview mirror seemed to shift, and the whispering, it didn't stop. By the time they reached the nearest motel, Jess was inconsolable, her mind unraveling with every passing hour. Peter tried to console her, but as night fell, he realized the whispers were louder than ever. They weren't coming from the house anymore. They were coming from within. To this day, the farmhouse remains abandoned, a silent monument to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. Locals avoid the property, claiming the whispers can still be heard on the wind. And as for Jess and Peter, they were never seen again. The end fades in, followed by subscribe for more stories that chill you to the bone.
There is something about the ocean that evokes both wonder and terror. It stretches infinitely, a massive abyss of mystery and secrets. The story I'm about to tell you unfolds on a remote beach, a place where beauty meets horror, where the serene sands bore witness to an event so chilling it's whispered about to this day. It was a summer evening when a group of friends decided to camp out at Blue Waters Beach, a secluded coastal stretch known for its unspoiled beauty. They were 5 in total: Tom, the leader of the group, Anna, the adventurous one, Chris, the skeptic Julia, the reserved bookworm, and Max, the joker, whose laughter often diffused tension. They arrived just as the sun kissed the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The beach was deserted, exactly as they'd hoped. They set up their tents, lit a small bonfire, and began sharing stories as darkness enveloped the shore. But what they didn't know was that they weren't alone. Something ancient and malevolent lurked beneath the waves, watching, waiting. As the night grew colder, Anna proposed they explore the rocky cove nearby. She had heard rumors of strange carvings on the rocks left by an unknown civilization. Reluctantly, the group agreed, their flashlights cutting through the darkness as they made their way along the shore. The waves seemed louder now, almost as if they were warning them to turn back. When they reached the cove, their flashlights illuminated something extraordinary, intricate carvings etched into the rock face. Symbols and shapes that none of them could decipher. But the centerpiece was a figure, grotesque and otherworldly, with hollow eyes that seemed to follow them. It sent shivers down their spines. Her words hung heavy in the air, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then Max broke the silence with a laugh, trying to lighten the mood. "Max, let's not overthink this, it's just rocks." But deep down, they all felt it, a presence, intangible yet oppressive. They decided to head back, their laughter forced, their footsteps quickening. The mood had shifted. The joy and excitement of earlier were replaced with unease. They tried to sleep, but the ocean seemed louder than before, the waves crashing violently against the shore. Then came the whispers. At first they thought it was the wind. Faint murmurs carried through the night, unintelligible but persistent. Anna was the first to investigate, stepping out of her tent and shining her flashlight toward the water. The beam caught something moving, a shadow darting across the waves. She called out, but there was no response. "Tom, it's probably a seal." But when they all gathered by the shore, they saw it, a figure standing ankle-deep in the water, its back turned to them. It wasn't moving. No response. "Anna, we should go back to the tents." But before they could move, the figure slowly turned. It was a man, or at least it had been. His eyes were empty sockets, his skin pale and waterlogged, as if he had been submerged for years. The figure raised an arm pointing toward the cove. Then, without a sound, it dissolved into the water. The group stood frozen, their breaths shallow. Finally, Tom spoke. "Tom, we need to leave now." They packed up in record time, but as they made their way to the car, they realized something horrifying. The tide had risen unusually fast, cutting off their path. They were trapped. But the whispers returned, louder this time, surrounding them. Shadows danced in the corners of their vision, just beyond the reach of their flashlights. Then, one by one, they began to see them. Figures emerging from the water, their empty eyes glowing faintly. Dozens of them, all staring at the group. "Chris, we can wait until morning." They ran back to the cove, the only place they could think of to hide. But as they entered, the carvings on the walls seemed to glow faintly, and the air grew colder. Julia tripped, her flashlight skidding across the ground and illuminating a horrifying sight. The carved figure on the wall was no longer stationary. It moved, its hollow eyes now staring directly at them. "Anna, what do we do? Tom, we stay together." But as he spoke, Max was pulled into the shadows, his screams echoing before being abruptly cut off. Panic erupted as the remaining four clung to each other, but the shadows closed in. Anna, trembling and tearful, pressed her back against the wall, the carvings cold against her skin. She could feel their icy presence surrounding her, their whispers growing deafening. Just as she thought it was over, the sun's first rays pierced the cove, and the figures vanished as if they had never been there. The beach was serene again, the only signs of the night before being the scattered belongings left behind. Anna was never seen again, but her journal was discovered weeks later, buried in the sand. In it, she described the carvings, the figures, and the whispers, a haunting account of a night on Blue Water's beach. To this day, no one knows what happened to the group. Some say they were claimed by the ocean, taken by the spirits that haunt the cove. Others believe they crossed into another realm, never to return. But one thing is certain, Blue Water's beach is no ordinary place. It's a gateway to something far darker, a reminder that some secrets are better left buried. If you ever find yourself on a lonely beach, remember this story. The ocean holds many secrets, and not all of them are meant to be uncovered. Some mysteries are best left undisturbed, for what lies beneath the waves might just be watching, waiting.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.